Frank Warren says that Tyson Fury might retire, quote unquote, following the collapse of the Alexander Usyk fight. He claims that Fury is upset, but the only thing he could possibly be upset about is the fact that the public have turned on him for blatantly ducking the fight. He priced himself out, it's as clear as day, and no amount of spin from Frank Warren, Tommy Fury, Colin Hart, or anyone else can disguise that fact. After all these years, the public at large have finally seen Tyson Fury for what he is, a compulsive liar and an extremely devious and manipulative person. Now, don't get me wrong, he's still a very good fighter, but at this stage of his career, he seems more intent on conning his way into the history books rather than fighting his way into them. And as for retirement, it could just be a cynical attempt by Frank Warren to garner sympathy for his man. When a guilty person gets caught, sometimes their first line of defense is to play the victim. Oh, look at what all you horrible haters have done to him. He's going to retire again now. Will that make you happy? Well, only if he gives his belt up, mate. If he does that and lets someone else fight for it, then we might actually get an undisputed fight finally. Fury thought he could play Usyk and play the public, but he wound up playing himself. It all backfired on him. One thing this saga has shown the world is the monumental levels of contempt that Tyson Fury and Frank Warren have for boxing fans. I include Frank Warren in this and not Bob Arum because Warren is out here trying to defend the indefensible, whereas Arum is conspicuously silent. Perhaps he knows what's best for him. Tyson Fury, his dad John, and his promotional team have worked very hard to sell the Gypsy King as a victim ever since his comeback in 2018. In the run-up to his fight with Klitschko, Fury made some controversial comments, which got him in trouble with the press, and a few months after the fight, he was stripped of his titles after testing positive for steroids. His reputation was in tatters. So when he came back 3 years later, they had to rebrand him. Now, all of a sudden, he's an advocate for mental health, and the fact he piled on an enormous amount of weight during his hiatus was used to sell the idea that he suffered from severe depression and all of his past transgressions should be excused owing to an unwell mind. What a lot of people overlook, however, is that Tyson Fury was prone to boozing and overeating long before his drugs ban. He often ballooned up in weight between fights during his early career. For example, he weighed 252 pounds for his 10th pro fight against Hans Blasco in March 2010. But just 3 months later, he was 270 pounds for his rematch with John McDermott. Stories were abound of people spotting him and his friends hitting the tiles on the weekend in the northwest of England. This is how he lived. Being heavy was actually normal for him outside of training camp. In a famous interview after the John McDermott rematch, Fury revealed that he'd been sparring his brother Shane in preparation for the bout, who's 25 stone himself. So it's not unusual for Tyson Fury and some other members of his family to get very heavy. It was only when his dad John went to prison and he was under the guidance of his uncle Peter that he started to show some discipline. But even then, after the collapse of the David Haye fight, he reportedly ballooned up close to 350 pounds and scaled a career heaviest at the time of 274 pounds for his next fight against Joey Abel. This is normal for Tyson Fury. Yet we were being sold the idea that this weight gain during the time he was away from boxing was highly unusual and was down to some severe bout of mental illness. His weight did balloon up to an all-time high, but that's because he'd never had such a long period of inactivity before. Now look, I'm not saying that he didn't feel down at times during that period, given the fact he couldn't box. I'm sure he did. But what I am saying is, I suspect a lot of the stories we were told about how close he was to ending it all were either highly embellished or completely made up. They had to rebrand him after all the controversy in the past, so they sold him as a victim, a misunderstood man who just wants to be loved. Tugging on the public heartstrings and presenting yourself as a flawed, down-to-earth character who can relate to the struggles of the common man is a tried and tested PR angle, and Tyson Fury leaned into it. As far as I can tell, the real Tyson Fury is all about squeezing his fans for money and fueling his colossal ego. And I wouldn't even have an issue with that if he was honest about it. But no, with Fury, it's all predicated on monumental levels of deceit. But after his latest stunt, pricing himself out of the Usyk fight, it seems the boy has cried wolf one too many times. And if he does retire, quote unquote, again is almost certainly going to be a strategic move as part of what I call the Mayweather method. If you want to know what that is, just click the video link on screen right now.